Hello and welcome to the Monday, June 23rd, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich, and this episode brought you by the Graduate Certificate Program in Industrial Control Systems Security is recorded in Stockholm, Germany. So often this podcast, I have mentioned the mark of the web and also alternate data streams. Now, if you're running Windows and you're using the NTFS file system, then, well, the mark of the web is encoded in the file as an alternate data stream. But of course, we sometimes also have other interesting data, sometimes malicious data hidden in alternate data streams. Didier today talked about how to decode some of these alternate data streams using some of his tools, most notably cut-bytes.py. That's one of the many Python tools that Didier maintains, but he also has filescanner, which is faster. It's written in C, but not maybe quite as flexible as the cut-bytes tool. Both tools make it really easy to get the information out of these alternate data streams. And personally, I think specifically for the mark of the web to sort of see the provenance of a particular file that was downloaded, well, that's certainly quite useful. And Microsoft made some changes to make their virtualized cloud PCs more secure. Now, this affects virtual cloud PCs running in Windows 11. And well, really the goal of these cloud PCs is to have sort of this isolated system in the cloud that's, well, not really connected to anything locally. Of course, by default, this hasn't been true in the past. For example, by default, clipboards were connected, or you had a USB pass-through enabled. This is now disabled by default starting in the second half of the year. This is something that you should be aware of. You can, of course, enable it if you need to. In May, Microsoft already sort of increased some of the isolation of these virtual cloud PCs by enabling features like, for example, the hypervisor protected code integrity or credential guard, and then, of course, the virtualization-based security, which makes it more difficult for an attacker to really gain access to any data on that particular cloud PC. Since they're sort of behaving like a real PC, well, they're actually meant to be persistent, so any malware or such would basically affect one of these PCs just like a real PC, and that's why you have to be as careful with them. But of course, you can also use them as a more ephemeral machine where you just basically destroy them and then create a new one as needed. And software used to exchange files with business partners and the like, well, it seems to be notoriously buggy and vulnerable. The latest example is documented by Horizon 3 AI. They found a path traversal vulnerability in Zend.to. That's Zend with Z and in the beginning. This path traversal isn't quite as critical as some of the other issues that we have seen in similar tools, but it still does allow access to files from different users, not just read access, but also write access. The one thing I haven't seen here yet is an arbitrary code execution vulnerability that often comes with these type of path traversal vulnerabilities, but apparently that's sort of one item they prevented here as they designed their system. A patch has been made available on June 10th. One security vulnerability that I've sort of mentioned a couple times, but I don't think ever really covered properly is, well, related to parser differentials. What this refers to is that in one particular programming language, you may have multiple parsers for complex formats like JSON and XML that behave slightly different. And this can easily then lead to problems as you're translating, for example, JSON to XML or back, or as you're using one particular parser to, for example, parse data for input validation, then later a different parser as you're actually using the data. Trails of Bits has a real great blog post where they're going over some of these differentials in Go. Now, Go is just one programming language. These issues, like I said, exist in other languages as well. We have covered them at times in other languages, also not just with JSON and XML, also with other sort of more complex formats as they're being parsed. So definitely something to be aware of. And I think this blog post makes a good read, even if you're not coding in Go, to really tell you a little bit what to look for as you are, for example, investigating how different parsers work and how they may or may not be compatible with each other. Well, and this is it for today. So thanks for listening and talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.